What is up, everybody? I am back for my first college football video of the year, and I will be going over my top 12 receivers in the 2023 draft class today, who I think will be, or at least have a chance to be drafted in the first 3 rounds based on their analytical profile so far. A lot will depend on how they perform this year, but these are the people I'm watching that I think will have a big impact potentially in fantasy football leagues in the future. And if you play Campus Can, obviously you know who these guys are, but maybe you can make an offer based on their long-term value. So number one, maybe controversial for some, but I have Jaxon Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State, 6 foot, 196 pounds, true junior this year. And the reason I have him number one is analytically he has been much better than Kayshon Boutte to date. I know a lot of the argument is that Boutte is a better athlete, he's more explosive. I don't think being a better athlete really translates to the wide receiver position as much. You see guys in the NFL who've been super successful, like Keenan Allen. There are plenty of others who are not top end athletes. Even T. Higgins dropped a lot in after his combine performance, and obviously he's a top receiver in the NFL too. So I don't think that is a huge factor for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. He was by far the best receiver on that team last year, and that included 2 high-end first-round picks and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And I think the Rose Bowl game kind of showed his ceiling. Pretty impressive player. I have him at number one. I understand if you have Boutte over him, but that is where I stand right now. Come on. And there we go. Number two, I have Kayshon Boutte. He's a little smaller. But another thing that factors into this decision is Boutte had a ankle injury, undisclosed, missed a lot of last year. So we don't really know how healthy he really is. He didn't look super good against Florida State the other day, but neither did JSN. But so I'm not putting any stock into that. But we don't really know what the extent of the injury is. And here, this is my take on the whole scenario. So I think there's a little bit of take lock concerning LSU receivers. I think people are comparing him to Jamar Chase and a few other, Odell Beckham Jr. maybe, mainly Jamar Chase. They are talked about in the same realm, and analytically, they are not the same player. So I know Boutte didn't play the full season, but in games he did play last year, he really wasn't extremely dominant, as you can see here. And surprisingly, JSN analytically matches up very good to what Jamar Chase did in his second year out of high school. Obviously, Jamar Chase was used a little bit more downfield, as you can see, with a higher average depth of target. But in terms of PFF grade, very similar. Yards per out run, which I use yards per out run to show efficiency. So it's really good for determining like breakout players who have been very efficient on a few number of routes run. You can kind of project that forward if they get more workload. Obviously, they're both running a lot of routes, so it doesn't really matter, but it adjusts a little bit for the amount of times teams are passing. Either way, you want that number to be high. Those are extremely good. The green means they're top 10% in my database, which includes every receiver drafted since 2016 and every receiver last year at the moment. Going to expand that, but that's where it is right now. So elite numbers here. Yards per team pass attempt is here. This has been shown to be pretty predictive to NFL success in terms of fantasy points per game. And really you want to see peak year yards per team pass attempt to be very high. That is even more predictive than early age production, although early age production is also important. But anyways, Jamar Chase leading the pack out of these, and JSN as well, similar numbers versus Boutte down at 2.18, which is not still pretty elite, but not as nearly as dominant as the other two. And then target share, pretty similar stats. I still have Boutte as a first-round pick. I think he's going to be a very good prospect. He might even go higher in JSN in the draft. Who knows? But analytically, right now, I have JSN as the better prospect. You feel free to roast me in the comments if you disagree, but that's where I am right now. Number 3, I have Jordan Addison. I think Jordan Addison's pretty good. He's 6 foot 175. He is going to be a junior, and he just transferred to USC for this upcoming season. So I did a little bit of digging. I put in some comparable profiles, size wise, production wise, mainly just PFF grade and yards per team pass attempt. And these are the names that came up who are similar size and had similar production in their second year out of high school. So obviously, a lot of these names have been drafted very high. Laviska Shenault obviously didn't pan out in the NFL, and neither has Tylan Wallace. But some of these other names are pretty impressive: Judy, Burks, Bateman, Chase. So that's pretty elite company. And I think as long as he has a good year at USC this year, he should be a first-round pick. I don't see any red flags in his profile. He plays out wide. He plays in the slot. He's getting targets downfield. He looks like a pretty good all-around receiver, and I think he's going to show it again this year in the Pac-12, being the lead receiver with Caleb Williams. So I think he's going to be a first-round pick. Lock it in. I don't think he has much as upside as the other two, but he's my number 3. So number 4, Quentin Johnston, TCU. He's the biggest receiver, traditional alpha receiver, if you will, 6'4", 193. And I think he very well could be a pretty high first-round pick just based on what teams look for. If they need a bigger receiver, he's really the only option. So I think teams could reach a little bit for him because of that. But analytically, he is definitely not as elite as the others so far in his career. Still been good enough to be a first-round pick, but not a generational prospect as of now. That can change. He could have a very good junior year. But these are the names of comparables based on size and production so far in their second year at high school. T. Higgins, Justin Ross. Obviously, this was before Justin Ross' injury. So pretty elite company there. Nico Collins, which he got drafted in the 3rd round, so that would be pretty not as high as we would want, but I mean, still a pretty good prospect. Drake London, Isaiah Hodgins, Cortland Sutton, Equinemius St. Brown. I think that's how you say it. I cannot say his name. And then N'Keal Harry. So a lot of first-round picks in that range, in a wide range of outcomes. But Quintin Johnson's really hyped up based on, the one clip where he jumps over corners. He's super athletic. He's actually a pretty good route runner, so we'll see where he ends up. We'll see how this season goes, but I still think he's going to be a pretty high-end wide receiver first-round pick in this draft, so I have him slotted pretty high. Josh Downs, personal favorite, smaller receiver. He's 5'10", 180, maybe. That's what he's listed at. We'll see. But, I really like watching him play. He's playing with Drake May over in North Carolina. And he's going to be a true junior. So he is small, but he has a lot of elite comparables based on production and size so far. So these were the top-end ones I found: Marquise Brown, Elijah Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Waddle. So let's break these down a little bit. Marquise Brown's a little bit different. He played out wide a lot in his college career versus Josh Downs has pretty much only been in the slot. I think the most direct comparable, and it's actually really close, is Elijah Moore. A lot of their second-year production stats are very similar, with Josh Downs actually being better in a lot of categories. Only thing concerning is his average depth target has been below 10, which isn't crazy concerning. You would like to see that to be a little higher, around the 10 range, just because it's really hard to out athlete people in the NFL. He's a really good athlete, but you see it with like Rondale Moore. Those guys with small ADOTs, it doesn't really translate to the NFL as much. So you want to be getting more downfield routes as a small receiver. But 8.5 isn't like a death sentence yet, of course. And we'll see. He might even improve that on his junior year campaign. So I really like Josh Downs. I just think the size might hold him back a little bit. I think he's probably going to get similar draft capital as Wan'Dale Robinson and Elijah Moore, which would be second round, which would still be very good for fantasy. Not a huge issue, but for the sake of this video, I think he'll be a second round pick. So that is why he's ranked 5th. Now we are going to go into my receivers 6 through 8. This is actually, the pictures are actually in the wrong order. I have Parker Washington, Penn State, 6. Raheem Jarrett, Maryland, 7. And Jermaine Burton, 8. This order. The reasoning is Jermaine Burton gets a lot of hype because he's transferred to Alabama. He was a very good prospect. And he had a really good freshman year at Jordan. He was on track to be a first-round pick after his freshman year and then saw a dip in his sophomore year, or really just kind of repeated what he did the year before. I think he has a chance. If he has a really good year, he has the athletic profile, the size. He can be a first-round pick easily. But I think more likely he's going to be a second or third-round pick, depending on how good he plays this year. And I think the same thing for the rest of these guys. I think these guys are going to be second to third-round picks. But overall, Parker Washington's just produced more so far to the date. Yards per team pass attempt, 1.87, which is much higher than the other two. He's commanded targets in a pretty crowded Penn State receiving core. And, I think we've seen a lot of receivers get drafted very high out of Penn State. He competed with Jahan Dotson last year. I think he is going to be the next one. He has pretty good size, 205 pounds. I think he'll be a second-round pick, likely, depending on how good of a year he has. And same with Raheem Jarrett. He was a 5-star recruit at high school, super athletic, pretty big guy too, and he's been pretty productive his first 2 years of college. I think he will get pretty good draft capital. And same with Jermaine Burton. I already talked about him, but that is my 6 through 8. 9 and 10. So I have at number 9, I have Zay Flowers, Boston College. So concern about Zay Flowers, right? So he is a senior this year. He didn't go to the draft after his junior year last year. And it's a little concerning because he has the production profile to have gotten drafted. Maybe not in the first round, but like 3rd to 5th round draft capital last year. So it's a little concerning that he didn't leave. It makes me feel as though the NFL maybe isn't as high on him as I am. But watching him play this last week, he is very explosive. He's a very good receiver, and not that great of an offense. So his production has been pretty insane to this point, and I think realistically he has a shot, if he has a really good year, to be a third-round pick. Same with Marvin Mims. Not as crazy of production, but he didn't run that many routes for whatever reason last year. 2.62 yards per run, which is very high. He's a pretty good deep threat. 17.6 yards average depth of target. And he had a pretty good week 1. I think depending on the year he has, he could be a third-round pick, or maybe a little later. We'll see. But he definitely has the skill set to ascend to that top-level draft pick. And then honorable mention, I just want to talk about A.T. Perry and Dontavian Wicks really quick. They both are pretty good. You'll hear their names a lot in the draft circles. A.T. Perry especially has been talked about a lot. I'm a little hesitant on A.T. Perry. So he had a lot of drop issues last year. I don't care about drops. Not that big of a deal. But this Jakari Robertson, I hope I said that right, I'm more worried about him not getting drafted because he had pretty elite production stats his 4th year at Wake Forest, did not get drafted, and came back for a 5th year, put up pretty good numbers again, and once again was not drafted. So that maybe doesn't translate well for A.T. Perry. I know they're different types of receivers, but I think maybe the NFL doesn't value Wake Forest's scheme as much, and they might be scheming receivers open instead of really getting open on their own. Oh my God. So I don't know. That's a little worrisome for A.T. Perry, especially with how many good receivers there are in this class, but he is a big guy and he has been productive to this point. I'm a little worried that maybe Donovan Green is back from injury this year. Maybe he takes that lead role in that offense. It was kind of split in week 1, so we'll have to look out for that. And then Dontavian Wicks has been pretty good. I think we're going to need a big step to see him get third-round draft capital this year. They both are going to be seniors this year, so we will see how dominant they are. But they do have to dominate this year if they want pretty high draft capital. Otherwise, they will be a later-round pick, most likely. Thank you guys for watching. I will be doing this for my top group of 5 receivers as well, and a few guys that played in the group of 5 last year that transferred to Power 5 schools this year. So I'll talk about those guys. I am going to be doing some videos on the 2024 class as well. Maybe I'll get into the 2025 class. Not really sure yet. And I will also be doing like weekly update videos to track how these guys are doing, give everybody a little bit of check-in on how they're progressing, and maybe I'll move my ranks around. Who knows? But this is it to start. Thank you all for watching. Peace.